Hi, everybody. Welcome to Bookies. Hey, first I want to start by giving a thank you to everybody that watched the YouTube review of The Assassin's Apprentice. For my channel, that one got a lot of views, and that made me really happy. And it made me even happier that there were some people that provided some comments, and so there we got to actually discuss books a little bit. And what made me super happy is that more people subscribe, because remember that when you subscribe to this channel, you are moving us closer to monetization, and when that happens, all that money is going to go to local libraries and literacy programs. But that's not why you clicked on the video. You clicked on the video because you know it's about The Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. And so this story picks up in this novel with Fitz being 15 years old. He's still a boy, but he's kind of on the cusp of becoming a man. So as you would expect for the second book in a trilogy, this second book does advance all the major storylines. And so I'm not going to give any spoilers here, so I'll just kind of provide my thoughts on each of the storylines and how I think Hobbs did with each of those. The depredations of the red ships continue along the coastlands, and the forged ones are a merciless weapon. And the idea of setting one's own kin to prey against the people is really a cruelty. I really like that idea in total. And here the question really becomes, what do they want? If the red ships are laying waste to the coastland, but they're not taking any treasure or booty or anything like that, what exactly do they want? Do you get an answer in this particular novel? The answer is no. You don't get really any kind of inkling. And this is a major storyline. This is the external enemy that's going to provide the thread through all three novels. And here, you know, you have a middle novel that's well over 600 pages. And we don't really even have any preliminary suggestions as to what the motivation is. And so I think Hobb kind of is lacking in that respect. So what about Fitz himself? And, you know, he's got himself a wolf cub that's growing into maturity. The wolf's cub name will be Nighteyes. And I think Hobb does a really serviceable job of advancing the relationship between Nighteyes and Fitz. And Fitz wants to provide a little distance, and there's two reasons for that. One, the wit, or for lack of a better phrase, the beast magic is very much frowned upon. The idea being that those who practice in this kind of hedge magic are ultimately going to become the beast that they're bonded with. So Fitz is a little concerned about that, but I think his major concern in not wanting to bond with Nighteyes is more a sense of, if he does, what happens if there's a loss again. All right, so let's talk about the wit. And what we learn about the wit is that even the most intimate of unions with another is shared by those with whom Fitz is bonded. So in this case, Nighteyes experiences everything that Fitz experienced, and Fitz experiences everything that Nighteyes experiences. So it's kind of interesting because Fitz goes from a position of being very lonely and isolated to now always being constantly bonded with another. And so the dynamic in Fitz has changed. And Nighteyes' perceptions overlay his own. So when Nighteyes makes a kill, Fitz experiences it, tastes it, feels everything that Nighteyes would feel. And so that bond of intimacy is shared. So the question then becomes, does Nighteyes experience those things that Fitz experiences? And we don't really know, and I hope that's fleshed out in the third novel. The one critique I have with how Hobb deals with the wit is she's inconsistent. And what I mean by that is she keeps emphasizing the fact that the communication with an animal, even though intimate, is rather limited by the animal's intelligence. So what would be the intelligence of a wolf cub, for example? And you can see that in some of the dialogue, you know, where Nighteyes would reach out and say, "We hunt soon?" Very basic grammar. But then, you know, the next page, you see Nighteyes suddenly having an understanding of the purpose and motivations of other characters and having very complex thoughts. So You know, I don't think you can have it both ways. So Hobb is trying to have it both ways, and I really think you just need to pick a lane and stay in it. All right, so the next branch of magic is the skill. We learn a little bit more about it and the toll it takes on the individual. And Hobb develops that through Prince Verity's use of the skill in order to protect the coastlands from the red ships. We learn how exhausting it is. And even though it's incredibly exhausting, it's draining on the body. And so it's kind of unhealthy because it's addictive. And here we can kind of see Prince Verity using the skill even when he doesn't need to. Once again, it's that addiction element. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out in the third novel. So what's the downside? You know, I do like that Hobb has downsides to the use of magic. And the downside here is as Fitz is learning the skill, primarily through his contact and relationship with Prince Verity, once again, he perceives what Prince Verity perceives and vice versa. So it's that intimacy that can't necessarily be refused that I think is going to cause real problems for Fitz in the future, and he's going to have to learn how to shut that off. So Hobb does a great job of kind of presenting that danger without really tipping the scales as to how that's going to unfold. The next theme, of course, is Prince Regal. You know, it's the storyline with regard to Prince Regal perceiving Fitz as a threat is very basic. You know, I mean, he's going to want to remove Fitz. We know that. However, what I thought was interesting here is not so much the dynamic of Prince Regal wanting to remove Fitz, and that does develop, but more Prince Regal's work on King Shrewd, his father. And to just put it forward very clearly, I would say Prince Regal is basically the worm tongue to King Shrewd. He's insinuating himself in, he's taking control of the environment of King Shrewd, and that's going to lead to really negative results, I think, in the future. I have a couple other minor critiques and hopes for the future on the third novel. In my opinion, it was very light on the whole idea of Fitz learning to become the consummate assassin and then acting upon that. So to me, that was a little bit of a disappointment. Also, another critique is that this was a novel well over 600 pages and it felt kind of slow in the pacing at times. And really, I kind of look at that and I think to myself, well, could this novel have been 100 pages shorter and Hobbs still accomplished all the goals she wanted to accomplish? And I think the answer there is yes. So be aware that that the pacing is going to be a bit slow in this novel at times. However, I would say the last 150 pages are really banger. The other thing I kind of hope for in this trilogy, and I hope this will be more of a theme as I read more of Hobbs' novels, is the characters I find they're well drafted. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they're not. However, I see a sense where the characters are either all good or just terribly awful and evil. There's not a sense of moral ambiguity in any of the characters. Hobb doesn't deal in that kind of gray area at all, and I kind of wish she would. With that, this is still an excellent novel. To me, it's still a 4.0 out of 5. And if the purpose of a second novel in a trilogy is to advance the major storylines and set us up for a real compelling conclusion in the third novel, this novel did accomplish that. Hopefully right about now, you're going to see a little circle with me when I was a naval officer. And if you click on that, you can subscribe. And I hope you do. Once again, it makes me really happy. So with that, please like the video, subscribe, and have a great day. God bless.